power and the ability to convene policy developments and to change policies also. You can also look at working through industry association to create and set those standards. And therefore, you can play a role, you meaning business organizations, can play a role in setting environmental and safety environmental norms. They can also set social norms, they can also set tax norms and so on. All these cumulative thing of levels of corporate action at the pyramid talks about how business organizations create that power and authority to have strategic impact not only at the regional level but also at the national and global level. And therefore, with all this, when we look at a business organization, we sometimes think of one entity who is just using resources and creating some profit. And if you look at, seeing in different channels and media, what is the stock prices, how is it going on? But have you ever reflected on what are the different levels of action and influences that business organizations can create? With this as a background, many thinkers, and Professor C.K. Prahlad was mentioned, one of the very, very leading, an eminent thinker, Professor C.K. Prahlad, till 2009, he was the one in the Harvard Business Review said that if corporations do not imbibe these kind of different levels of actions and do not see environment, social, governance and economic issues as imbibed in their decision making process, what will happen is they will never remain to be competitive in this world. They will cease to die off in the coming years, and therefore they will be never remembered as a leading corporate in the coming years. Now with this, there are two things that he also wanted to share. He said, when we talk about sustainable development and corporate sustainability, what is it actually in very simple terms? In very simple terms, it is about how does the organization continue in the long term. And the ability to continue in the long term is by imbibing environmental, social, economic, governance consideration in their, not only in their decision making process, but part of their policy making, part of their procedures, part of the implementation and the review mechanisms. And thereby he said two important things that everyone needs to mention, everyone needs to consider rather. First one is considering the 5 capitals. Yeah? And you may think that when I use the term capital, it always relates to what? Finance, financial capital. How much of capital do I have? It's your bank balance that you are really relating to. That's a mindset which everyone is sort of adhered to. The second concept is about your sphere of influence. Let me go back to the capitals. How many of us think that the energy, water, air, land that we use and set up business organizations which grow by the year are really about not only just resources but they are capitals? And why do I differentiate between resource and capitals? Because resource is something that you are, it's available, you use it, and sometimes you don't bother, you may sometimes choose to conserve. When you turn that resource into capital, immediately the thinking comes that how do I minimize my wastage, how do I optimize my use, how do I bank it so that my future generation can also avail that same resource or capital. And therefore it's something like money. At the end of your career, you would like to store money for your family and for yourself, and therefore you think that okay, I am sustainable now. In the same way, when business organizations look at natural capital, meaning all your materials, all the resources of energy, air, water and land, those are all your natural capital. Let's look at the second one, which is the social capital. The social capital comes from the relationships that a business organization grows with its surroundings at the local level, at the regional and at the national and international level. All these relations will have to give that constructive, enabling ability to the organization to continue to operate. And therefore the term, you always get what? You get legal license to operate. But when you think about actual operation of a process or a factory, it's the social license which is most important. If the surrounding community is not agreeing to your processes, you will never be able to operate. And therefore, the relations, if you look at them as capitals and you nurture those relations in a positive manner, your sustainability is not at stake. The third capital is the human capital, and the human capital are people like all of you sitting here as potential managers of tomorrow. Yeah, the skilled people, yeah, the capacities, the innovation within the companies. If these are not harnessed and these are not growing in the company, you will not be able to actually deliver products which are cutting edge, and therefore human capital needs to be harnessed. The fourth and the fifth are quite easy to understand because we are all accustomed. Manufactured capital, it's the the infrastructure that you grow, and the financial capital. If you look at this circle which are intertwined, you will see that the natural, social and human capital, they are all linked to each other. Yeah? And one example, and maybe a question I throw back to you is, do you consider water as a natural capital or a social capital? What is it? Natural? All of you say natural capital. I would say that it's also social capital. Just imagine yourself to be working in a plant which is very water intensive, and just imagine the original community who has been residing and using the same limited source of water. You will actually end up into a social unrest because water is really a basic need, and the social issue may arise out of competitive use of the water by the plant and by the community. And therefore, when you look at all these capitals, the social, human and the natural, they are all interlinked. On top of that is the financial capital, which is showing that if all these four capitals are not working together, the financial capital will not grow. And therefore, it's very important for all of you, I think, today, especially when I come to talking to students of the cost and management research institutes, it's to also help you link about, if I have to work in a business organization, I always look at the profit. Yes, that's my responsibility. But how do I generate my profit, and how do I continue to grow my financial profit is a very important question. The second question is that as a business organization grows, the sphere of influence also grows. The radar of influence and authority also grows. So if you are small like an SME, you will only think about workplace. Whereas my factory, this is my boundary, this is the workplace, and my sphere of influence is really there. As this SME grows to a bigger organization, not only in that region but maybe in different countries, the sphere of influence also grows. The sphere of influence grows into the marketplace, into the supply chain, into the community, into the local, national and international network. Now, if you look at these two, you will immediately start thinking that business organizations are no more isolated. You are no more secure as a business organization to implement your policies and procedures without thinking of the 5 capitals, without thinking of the sphere of influence and the impact that a business organization can create. And therefore, the extension to this is that if you are becoming porous in a way, you are not so much opaque, you're becoming porous by the day. What will happen is the impact of the stakeholders are also influencing the way that businesses are going to be run. And therefore, the importance of stakeholder concerns and the consideration of stakeholder concerns are becoming very, very crucial by the day. What is happening therefore is this term of accountability. Who am I accountable to? As a student, maybe you are accountable to your faculty, to the dean of the institution. You are accountable to your parents because they are supporting you. You are accountable to yourself. As a business organization, if you have to grow and if you have to sustain your business for that long-term financial growth, who do you have to be accountable to? You have to be accountable to all the stakeholders, not only at the workplace, but at the supply chain, at the community, at the local and national network. And when you look at your level of corporate action at those different, levels that I showed in the triangle, you will see that the difficulty and challenges of identifying risks and opportunities are growing. Yeah? And complexities of identifying the right risks and opportunities for a corporation is also becoming complicated. Therefore, when you talk about accountability, there are 3 ways in which you could be accountable. The first one, which is very important and it's close to my heart, and I always, even to my daughter, I say that when you get something and when you're recognized, you are actually getting burdened with more responsibility, and I can relate very much to a business organization. With economic authority, with the power of wealth that you create and you store, you actually become more responsible to large number of people, more responsible for your developmental solution, more responsible for the supply chain, more responsible for setting standards, and more responsible for the national level policy changes. Accountability can also come when you look at how do you actually react to the stakeholders. Am I just blind to my stakeholders? Do I consider my stakeholder comments? The other way the accountability can come is to reactively or proactively act on the stakeholder expectations. These are the ways that accountability can work, and therefore very important that we need to account for how do we use those 5 capitals, how do we create those 5 capitals so that they live and they are there for the the coming generations. And how do I cater to the expectations of competitive use of these capitals maybe with my stakeholders. And therefore, the basic concept is that if I am having a good policy on the website, and if I have let's say some procedures, some management systems, will I be seen by my stakeholders as a corporate who's responsible, who has corporate citizenship imbibed? And therefore this question of how do the stakeholders really judge me? How do they get evidence that I am a responsible corporation?